Live.
Well, hello, everybody, and welcome to our ISE Fireside webinar. We are thrilled to be with you this afternoon here, recording out of Georgia today. So actually, both Todd and I are as well. So it's great to be with you. So we've got a great program plan. It's a little abbreviated overall, but let me sort of take you through some of the housekeeping things, and then we'll jump into our introductions and our great discussions. So first and foremost, we will commence our webinar, and if you are joining us today and complete the webinar overall, you will receive a 1/2 CPE credit. We ask that you fill out the survey to let us know that you are in need of that half credit, and we will send you the email documentation. So if you leave the webinar early, you will not be able to get that documentation and complete the survey. We will also have a Q&A session at 2:25 this afternoon. So please let us know your thoughts by entering the Q&A or entering your questions, I should say, into the Q&A chat window. Well, let's go ahead and jump into our panelist introductions. First, Todd Gorilla, would you say hello and tell us a little bit about yourself? Oh, Todd, you got to unmute.
All right. All right. Good afternoon, everyone. My name is Todd Gorilla. I'm the CTO for Cisco's Industry Solutions Group. We have a team of subject matter experts that really put together how Cisco's technologies, along with our partners' technologies like Rockwell Automation, really come together to deliver kind of full business outcomes for customers. Today's topic is going to be around security, so we're going to be talking about how IT best practices have worked into the industrial world and really helped deliver that total outcome for our customers. Certainly, there's no such thing as perfect security, so we're always learning and we're always working with you all to work through those problems. My background prior to Cisco was I spent nearly 20 years with industrial companies. I was with Siemens, General Electric, companies like that. So it's kind of a unique opportunity to be able to talk in this industrial world from both the systems and solutions sense as well as the IT sense. Thanks.
Well, thank you, Todd, and welcome to the ISE Fireside webinar today. We're glad to have you. And Don, it is so great to see you. I think the last time we saw each other was RSA 2020. So I feel like it's been quite a while that we've connected in person, but I know we've stayed in touch during the pandemic. Give us an introduction about yourself. And I also want to say thank you to Rockwell Automation for being our sponsor today. So we would love to hear a little bit about what you guys are doing on the security front.
Hi, thanks, Marcy. Yes, I am the VP and CISO of Rockwell Automation. I have held that role since 2016. And since then, we have embarked on this journey of creating a holistic security program at Rockwell Automation. We realized when the big cyber attacks happened in 2017, WannaCry and NotPetya, we couldn't look at security as in stovepipes. We had to have a holistic program that includes what we call our entire connected enterprise ecosystem. So our security program covers IT, OT, product security, security of the services that we deliver to our customers, and everything in that entire ecosystem. So I'm very excited about the opportunity to talk about a very specific topic that came to light, especially during COVID.
Well, again, thank you so much for being with us. We really appreciate it. Let's go ahead and jump into our discussions on secure remote access in the long term. And I really think it's very visionary of you to have this session with us today. What we saw are millions of people having to work from home in the past year to support social distancing guidelines during the pandemic. In the industrial control environment, or ICS for short, companies restricted the physical access to their employees that were essential in running the operations, and the safety was certainly paramount of a concern. Many of us experienced shortages at grocery stores due to COVID outbreaks impacted by factory employees, resulting in plant shutdowns. And as a result, those third-party vendors found themselves needing to connect remotely to the plant floors, as did the employees, to work on some of these industrial control systems. Well, while many countries have now had to loosen the restrictions on these areas, there are indications that the working remotely actually has some long-term benefits or even permanent for some. And we're also seeing some of the aspects and benefits there because if the COVID or the pandemic has come through in different waves, it gives us the flexibility to either work remotely or in person. So we have to really think about security and access in the ICS world. Um, and that's really got to impact also our productivity and quicker response times. So that really raises some really important questions. First, is your industrial control system network adequately protected against these types of security threats to remote access? We've seen a heck of a lot of crazy out there in the last 16, 17 months. And we want to make sure that our field employees and third-party vendors are also connecting securely, but when they're connecting remotely to the plant floor. So really access to really, to manufacturer safety overall as we're looking forward. So let's just sort of discuss the permanent secure remote access options that CISO and technology leaders have deployed over the last year, sort of using you guys as a benchmark and great example of that, and how we can ensure access to the network and that is protected and of course safe, not only for today, but for the long term of things. My first question, Dawn, is to you. What is the current state of security remote access? And what are people really struggling with out there?
I think when COVID first started, everybody was pretty much focused on their IT connectivity because everyone in the company is working from home, and how are we going to have them work securely? And so I think at the beginning, the plants were kind of neglected in a lot of cases because they were focused on the IT enterprise network. And as you said, Marcy, the primary focus in manufacturing was keep our employees safe. And we all saw during the beginning of COVID, and actually it's still happening now, there were shortages because plants, you get one employee who gets sick and you have to shut down the plant. And so at first, I don't think they were thinking a lot about connectivity to the plant. They just were focused on keeping the plants running. But then the shift started, and I know at Rockwell, we started getting questions from our customers. How can we connect securely to our plants? Because it's not just that we don't want third-party vendors and OEMs coming into the plants for maintenance. We don't even want our own employees coming in to do maintenance and to be programming PLCs. We just want the essential plant workers in there. So the first thing that people started doing, they started trying to do things quickly and, without making a big investment. So one thing that we saw companies doing was just use WebEx or use Teams or, whatever your collaboration platform is, use that. So if you need to have someone come into your plant, you let them into like a Teams meeting, and then they can do things through that interface. And that's, that's a secure way of doing things. You can watch what they're doing. You can restrict what they can do. So that's one option. Another option was to install jump boxes. A little more complicated, takes a little more effort than just opening up a meeting, but it gives you more scalability and more flexibility. So that's kind of where people started. They started with just trying to do what they could quickly and easily because they realized they needed security. But one thing we've seen over the past year and a half is the number one target of ransomware is companies running manufacturing. They want to bring down manufacturing because you're much more likely to pay the ransom. And so now I think companies are shifting, and now they're starting to look at, I think we need a more robust solution. And there have been a number of technical solutions that have come out. And so now I see the industry shifting from that quick cheap, what can I just put in place quickly at first, to now we're looking for a more permanent solution.
Absolutely. And Don,
Well, with
we
you,
see.
Don. Oh, go ahead. Dad.
Yeah, I just wanted to add to Don's comments. We see customers that took that, you could almost call it Band-Aid approach. They needed to have minimum viable product to continue operations, to keep the systems working. And so much we see customers evolving now to taking best practices from IT, like zero trust architecture, and actually looking at how are they architecting the plant environment to have that zero trust approach, whether it's connectivity to the systems or enablement of the workforce. All of those types of approaches can be really built on top of a baseline zero trust architecture that allows you to do identity validation. It allows you to do segmentation, all of those types of approaches that you would normally take when you're setting up an ICS for local management, but also now as you're enabling that remote access to it. And Don, you made a really good comment. It's not only allowing access, to the people inside the company, but it's understanding when the people inside the company are accessing it, are they accessing the systems that they should be able to access? And, are there the appropriate guardrails on so that they can't kind of accidentally cause an issue? So cybersecurity looks at the accidental as well as the, direct attack kind of scenario. And especially as we've seen the expansion to third-party advice needing to come in from outside versus having somebody travel to these facilities. And we see that as an ongoing productivity gain for the industry as a whole, that we're going to see more remote operations and remote expert access into these facilities. And it's just got to be built off of the right foundation.
Shifting gears a little bit, you guys, on some of the best practices for the secure remote access, because really we have to all have a comfort level of tunneling in and having access, as well as the aspect of it being secure. So let's sort of take a step back and look at the foundational capabilities that have become the baseline for you in the best practices and going forward, because I'm a firm believer that you always learn to step forward, otherwise you end up stepping back. And what should manufacturers out there be looking for and considering when developing their solutions? And Todd, I'm going to start with you because you had some really good insights on your previous response.
Sure. One of the biggest things that people learned, especially as you look at longer term remote access or secure access strategies, is you need to have visibility of who's on your system, what is on your system, the devices that are connected, where they are connected. I mentioned segmentation earlier. Understanding, what devices are within what local area network as you have people coming in, and that way you can limit access to different parts of the network. You can limit the people that have access. So visibility overall is kind of the starting point for a security strategy, then getting into the appropriate authentication strategies so that you can protect, defend, and then mitigate as different incidents happen.
Don, what about your thoughts here? I mean, I know you're kind of carving it out and planning for the future. What could you tell some other manufacturers out there what you guys are doing?
Yeah, I see a lot of there are some really great solutions that have come out for secure remote access, primarily, let's face it, because of COVID. And it's funny, Marcy, because you said it looks like we're starting to go back to normal, but I don't know, I'm starting to get worried about that.
I am too. I'm getting a little worried for sure.
I have a feeling secure remote access is going to be a hot topic for the near or medium term future anyway. But a lot of our customers are struggling because they're looking and saying there are all of these different solutions out there, and how do I choose which one is right for us? And so what we're advocating is you really need to put together a comprehensive set of requirements and use that to assess each of those products and figure out which is best for you. So kind of building on what Todd said, it's not just about the technology, it's people, process, and technology. So some requirements that like we're thinking about and we advocate thinking about is identity and access management. You want a solution that will integrate with your IAM solution. So that way you don't have to be trying to maintain your access control as you were talking about, Todd. Todd, you can just integrate that in with the IAM system that you already have. Audit trail. Does this tool, does it produce an audit trail? And does someone actually look at it? So can you log who is connecting to your network? What are they doing? How long were they in there? And does anyone look at that log? And then there's the approval processes. You have to really think about that. And it's probably not one solution fits all, but when you have a vendor that needs access to your network, should they be able to get in anytime they want? Do you want to limit their access to 8 to 5, Monday through Friday? Do you want to say they have the credentials, but they can't connect until someone goes in and presses the button to approve that they can access the network? And then contractual requirements. Like we've thought about things like if someone leaves your company and they have credentials to access our plants, it is your legal responsibility to tell us so that we disable that account. You can't share accounts, or can they? Some companies that need to access our network, when we need them, we'll pick up the phone and call the vendor, and we don't know that it's going to be Joe Smith that's going to come this time. It might be whoever's on call at that moment. So these are all very complicated things that I think everyone has to make sure that they think through. And then one more thing I'll throw in, sorry, I'm talking long on this, but I just think it's really important. There's third-party risk management. This is a third-party product that you are letting into your environment. And as we've seen from SolarWinds, CodeCov, Accellion, Kaseya, supply chain breaches they're the thing these days. And so you really have to make sure that you do a third-party risk assessment of this technology, of the company. Do they have a secure development life cycle? We have to be thinking, like the executive order is mandating, we have to be thinking about that supply chain and does it meet our security requirement?
Yeah, and that multi-vendor world that you just described, that's what's key. I mean, Cisco and Rockwell, we work very well together. We've worked well together at large pharmaceuticals, at small bourbon producers. We've worked at all different types of customers, but the key that we have is we both bring an ecosystem together. And when we look at this secure access problem, it's how are we, it's the entire stack of where security needs to exist. We've seen some of the recent ransomware attacks coming in from the customer service side and shutting down the manufacturing production operations because they don't have proper access to the billing records and things like this. So we need to understand that it's an entire system. It's not one thing. It's not an ICS system that's isolated to one plant. It's really the operations of the entire company. And you have to have the strategies and the processes that cross all boundaries of that.
That's a really good point, Todd. I think if companies that have a robust, solid security strategy that takes into account IT and OT and the convergence of the two, secure remote access is just another thing. It's just another requirement that they have to incorporate into that security strategy. I worry when companies just kind of jump into one thing without really thinking comprehensively about security of the entire ecosystem.
Yes, and it's also identified there's no such thing as secondary processes. When IoT started in manufacturing and started across many industries, there was, lots of movement to put gateways and move data and things like this. Well, you can't have those disparate kind of connections, because ultimately there is a connection back into either corporate systems or some level. Even what may get looked at on a laptop could become the gateway in for one of the bad actors. And this is what's, it's important to think through all of it. There's security tools that you can use at the cloud level. There's security tools that you can use at your corporate systems level, and then there's security tools that go right down to the way the network and architecture of the ICS system itself is built. So it is important to think through all of those investments as you make them. Do those risk assessments, Don, that you and your company have done, really good work at. And I think that it ties up so much of total operations in this environment.
Yeah, and the one thing you said, Todd, about, most attacks on OT these days, they come in through IT. They come in through phishing or an unpatched system or RDP. They get into your IT environment and then they traverse into OT. But as more and more companies implement secure remote access, well, let's say as more and more companies implement remote access, that is going to be a new vector that it has to be secure, because we cannot give the threat actors out there a direct way into that OT environment, because we know that's what they're targeting these days.
Yeah, and there's some fantastic opportunities that exist today to even just, with more visibility as you get connectivity between the IT and the OT side of things, you can actually add more protection than you may think you have with an air gap even. Air gaps are the ones that sometimes are extremely risky when you look at that between IT and OT, because that's where somebody still eventually needs to plug something in on the OT side, and it's not managed and secured the same way as a fully built end-to-end type secure system.
And we've also found a lot of companies that think they are air gapped really aren't air gapped. It's really
exactly.
tough and rare to be totally air gapped these days.
Absolutely.
In manufacturing, especially.
Well, it looks like we have a few questions that have popped on in our Q&A chat window. Are you ready to tackle those questions with us? All right. Well,
Sure.
First I want to say thank you for some great discussions so far. And I want to say thank you to our audience for asking some questions. So I'm going to go to Anthony Sabata's question. It's somewhat bit of a comment, but I'd love to get your thoughts. It's also just access in general. The word remote is probably not going to be relevant in terms of where your data lives going forward. The new perimeter is identity and data, where the controls need to be applied. And I could not concur more, Andy. So great observation. Don or Todd, do you agree with that?
Yeah, I think
You guys want to?
Go ahead.
I think this comes down to what Todd was saying about zero trust, that we need to start taking a zero trust approach to security in general, to include manufacturing and OT environments. Zero trust has kind of been a buzzword for years. It's been a great concept, but people weren't really jumping on the bandwagon. But just in the past, I would say 6 to 9 months, I've noticed in the CISO community, that's what everybody's talking about now. And we're also realizing that a lot of the components of zero trust we have in place. We've been building the building blocks of a zero trust architecture without even thinking about it that way. So yeah, I think you're absolutely right, Andy. We have to be thinking about where the data is, and that's kind of the whole convergence of IT and OT and the ecosystem and cloud. And yeah, you're exactly right.
Yeah, and Don, I would just add that security should not obscure efficiencies. Efficiencies to getting the right data to the right people or to the right processes is critical. And most of the approaches that we are seeing for a long-term approach to this are looking at how can we make sure that we're enabling those efficiencies as they are needed.
And speaking of those efficiencies, so you just gave me an opening for my new bandwagon here, which is that connectivity between OT and IT, that's why we have IT OT convergence. So it used to be the plants would get their work instructions for the day or for the week, and boom, they just start working on them. Now it's real time, it's just in time. And so, you run your line and then you go back to your ERP system to say what's next, and you get your next set of instructions. My big thing now in the wake of all of these ransomware attacks is we've got to figure out what's the resiliency strategy here, because if you lose that connectivity, or if you sever that connectivity, because IT was just hit with ransomware, boom, we need to sever the connection so manufacturing can continue. Well, what's going to happen when you go back for those next work instructions? So that's something that we are actively looking at Rockwell, and I've talked to other customers that are going down that same path. So I think it's a new industry best practice that we have to figure out.
Let's jump into Todd Fitzgerald's question. And Todd, thanks for asking your question today. Should IT move to a model where they're increasingly core services to the home user to ensure their routers are capable and configured correctly? What a great question, because I think a lot of people did not really realize that their home environments was going to be an extension of the corporate network. Todd, would you like to tackle this one? Because this is, I would say, a great question for Cisco, actually.
Yeah, I'll take this one, and that's when you look at how IT departments are securing their remote workers today. They are getting into remote device management capabilities. More and more, they're actually working with service providers on how to advise home users on settings that allow corporations to really set the appropriate security protocols, or at least set the right guidance to the home users on what they should accept from their service providers' security routines. Certainly at the device level, when you bring your Mac or PC home, most corporate departments are already doing device management on those things. It is now a big move as to how they can give better advice to the actual networking equipment in the homes. And there's many software tools that are over top of all of it today that are actually helping manage that process completely invisible. It's not changing any settings on the router, but it's just watching the type of traffic that's going through the corporate network and the connections that you have into the corporate network.
I'd like to try to get John Johnson's question in before we have to say goodbye. John, great to hear from you. We're going to be out at CornCon. What is the best approach to changing culture at the manufacturing facilities and the people responsible for being gatekeepers to become OT secure to national standards such as NIST and CRS? Dawn, do you want to tackle that question?
Oh, another one of my favorites. Yeah, IT and OT have totally different cultures. And what I found at Rockwell, and this is the question I get asked most by our customers, is how do you get IT and OT to work together? Because they don't work together, they don't understand each other, they have totally different outlooks on life. And so what we did was we used the NIST cybersecurity framework. A lot of you have already heard me talk about this, but it's my favorite topic. Bring IT and OT together in a room, lock them in a room for 4 to 5 days, walk through that NIST CSF. And at first, they will be at odds. OT will say, well, you're not going to patch our systems. We can't trust IT. And IT says, well, why not? We patch everything else. Nothing goes down. You come in every morning. It's fine. And then OT tells them why. Why won't that work? And IT says, well, okay, now at least I understand. Can we come up with a way that we could make this work? And it was just an amazing cultural bridging that we did at Rockwell, and other companies have done it as well. It's a fun thing to do, to see the two teams come together, understand each other, and create a strategy that they both buy into and thus implement together.
Well, thank you very much. Thank you, Don and Todd, for being with us today. Thank you to Rockwell Automation for being a sponsor. Folks at home, please fill out the survey. We'd love to get your feedback on what you thought about today's program. And also, if you are in need of the half CPE credit, make sure you let us know so we can send that email over to you. For those at home, I hope that you'll join us and save the date. On August 17th, we'll be hosting our ISE National Summit. It's not too late to register for that great event. And if you'd like to hear more about this topic, please get in touch with Dawn Capelli, VP and CISO at Rockwell Automation, and her email address is right up there on the screen. I want to thank everybody for joining us today. We really had a wonderful time at our ISE Fireside webinar. We look forward to seeing you at our upcoming digital events in some cities near you, some ISE private dinners coming back in person. Stay healthy and safe, and thank you so much for joining us today. It looks like, Dawn just let us know that her email address is wrong in the window. We apologize. When we send out tomorrow's email to you, recapping our program, we will make sure we have Dawn's correct email address included. Apologies, Dawn, that we have that captured incorrectly up on our recap screen, but we will make sure everyone gets that correct email address in our follow-up email tomorrow. Thank you again, Dawn, and thank you, Todd, for joining us, and thank you, Rockwell Automation. Have a wonderful afternoon, everybody. Thank you.
Bye. Thanks.
Bye-bye.